Business School, thanks very much indeed for coming in.
My pleasure.
I want to focus on something that's been anticipated to some extent with this election, service delivery protests. We look at the hotspots that's been identified by the police and the IEC, the Sterk, or the Marikana. You look at various places in the northwest and the eastern Cape Sterk Strait. Theo, what influence or impact do service delivery protests in all have on this election? I mean, is it significant to say that it will sway results?
Yeah, I think it's very important. It's one of the key characteristics of the process towards the election. If we were to characterize the 2014 elections in history, we would probably say it was the most, or the most amount of civil protests that we've ever had really in the last 20 years, all over the country, widespread. And it is a complex phenomenon, and it is not necessarily something where parties, opposition parties, are at loggerheads with each other. It's very often within the ruling party. Problems in communities. So rather than to vote for another party, communities tend to resort to measures such as boycotts, marches, burning of tires, blocking roads, which we've seen today in places like Bloemhof. We've seen it over the last week, or even isolating towns, like we've seen in Malamulele around Tsanin area, where people actually blocked entrance into roads. Yes, it's very complex. The difficulty for us to analyze while people are voting, are they in fact going to vote, or are they going to abstain? The question is, they have these civic actions and protests, and then the question is now, what are they going to do? And it seems to me we'll have to wait a little bit longer to find out. But I do think it has an impact, and I do think it will definitely show towards the end, when we see the results, that it will have a meaningful impact. If the ANC loses support, this will be one of the factors that we'll have to look into deeper.
Does it matter what is the second biggest party in a particular province? Let's look at Limpopo, we look at the EFF, for example. Does that matter when you're searching for an answer to see what is the resultant effect?
Oh yes, it will matter, because what we'll see in places like the Northwest, that I know very intimately, is that people will definitely vote a kind of a protest vote. And we'll have to look very specifically at the provincial vote. Because it seems to me we're moving into an era, 20 years into the new South Africa, that people are now sophisticated enough to use their votes differently, for the first time really. It has been possible all along, but it seems to me now, especially in Gauteng, where there's a hot political fight going on, and in places like Northwest and Limpopo, people may use their provincial vote for another reason, and maybe keep their basic political home intact for the national vote.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier that some of the voters would prefer maybe to abstain. Yeah. How effective is that? I mean, a lot has been said about abstaining from the vote or even spoiling your ballot. Is that really effective in making your point as a voter?
No, I don't think staying away is effective, because you wouldn't know why people are staying away. You can stay away because you have a braai at home. You can stay away because you're mad at some politician. You can stay away because you feel like Mr. Casserels. You may stay away for several reasons. We will never know, because you haven't voted. So in the end, we will analyze to death the stay away vote. Why approximately 7 to 8 million people did not vote. We would just not know. And so it's not effective. Voting for something, a positive use of your civil right, is a far more effective mechanism than abstaining from vote. Although it's your right, it's your privilege, you can do it, I don't think it's good application.
Just looking at the expected numbers, in total, we've got over 25 million voters that are expected to participate. In terms of the percentage of that, as a percentage of the voting population, what would be a good number? Let me put it like that. What would be a good number for us to watch out for, to say, you know what, the turnout in these elections was really good because we've reached the 35% target or a 40% target?
We must be very careful when we do this. If we take a global picture, in other words, let's look at the world. Anything where people participate in excess of 50% is good. If we look at European elections, if we look at American elections, you'll see a very low voter turnout. South Africa has been blessed since the beginning of having very high voter turnout, 70%, 77%, 80%.
Yeah.
I think any number in the 70% range is a good number. That means roughly about 18 to 19 million people would have participated in this election.
Even with these born frees, shouldn't we expect a higher number because they are in this now?
No. Now, generally what we see, that young people, although they may be vocal and they may be high on rhetoric, they don't participate. They've got other things to do on a holiday like today, and their interest in politics, it seems to us, start getting serious when, roughly speaking, you finish your studies, you've got to work, you've got marriage
you have
partner,
to start paying the bills.
You've got kids.
Yeah.
Let's say by your late 20s, early 30s. That's when people tend to become serious about politics, not before that.
But should we be concerned about the fact that we have this seemingly growing apathy amongst the young? If you just look at the predictions ahead of this election, I put this to the analysts before you as well. What does that tell us about the type of turnout we're going to see from these very young people in 2019?
You know, you're going very deep into the sociology of what we're seeing around us. And I would like to link this to a thing that happened in Tunisia 2 years ago, where people with Blackberries and iPhones and all kinds of smartphones actually got a revolution going. It spilled over into other countries. It even happened in London. Now, our young, up-and-coming voters, they are all equipped with these kind of things. They're on social media all the time. They tweeting, they SMSing, they're doing all these things. So they participate in a different way than the conventional way that we've developed over the last 100 to 150 years since we have developed democratic elections globally. So I think we're on the cutting edge of things that are changing, and we're just not seeing the changes clearly. I think they're participating, but in a different way.
All right, we'll pick it up further when we do come back. Let's get a short break now. When we come back, more analysis and crossings to the various centres across the country.